Okay guys, in this video we're going to be taking another look at VeChain. Here we are on the weekly chart, and this is always a good place to start when we're zoomed right out and we get a good picture of where things are likely to go during the second half of this year. As we enter this bull run, we obviously entered back down here in March of 2020. We finished wave 1 around July. I think many people in the space can remember what was going on around July, August of 2020. Some fantastic highs were set for VeChain. We had a pullback towards the end of the year, November. This is the end of the second wave, and that went into wave 3. Wave 3 peaked out, I think it was up in March or April. Yeah, it was actually April of 2021. Now we've gone into wave 4. Wave 4 is the steep correction after following a flat wave 2. And this looks like it's actually had a pretty decent correction for VeChain. It's a stereotypical move for wave 4's 40%. And what you see here is a move that's in and around that area. So actually, this is actually a pretty good clean exit here of wave 4 going into wave 5. Now, wave 5 does put VeChain approximate value at around $1 level. And again, it all depends on what else happens from a fundamental point of view, whether or not it's going to push above or drop down a little bit lower than that. But ultimately, according to the technical data at the moment, we're looking at about $1 level by the end of the year, the second half of the bull run for VeChain. So always good to start with a zoomed out view, understand where we're going. And let's get into this brief update here for the short-term stuff as well. So as we can see during this weekly view, we obviously are in this kind of correction here. The good news is, guys, that the volumes are decreasing whilst we've been correcting across these weeks. So again, even whilst we're having this push to the upside, that volume was also decreasing, as you can see here, but also that selling pressure has been decreasing as well week by week. So we know that the bigger macro picture is running out of steam on the corrective side, which means that we are going to start seeing a push to the upside soon. We've also had a good correction on this relative strength index. It's actually now at 46, so huge amounts of potential to push the relative strength index to the upside, along with that volume and of course that price. So from a big macro view, this is fantastic. Let's jump on down into our daily. Let's expand this up a little bit and see exactly what is going on here. So from the daily view, guys, we can see what's been going on with basically VeChain here and the VET token. Obviously from the high, we've seen a bit of a sideways trade here. We had Bitcoin's correction bringing us right down into the lower area of wave 4. Now we have got a few support zones kind of marked out here if we were to drop down any lower. I don't think this is going to be the case because we already have kind of seen some of the major damage be done here, the stereotypical 40% move for wave 4. So it's unlikely, in my opinion, that we are likely to drop down any lower, but it's always good to have these areas scoped out just in case. So we have a 4.6 cent area, a 3.4 and a 2.3, with of course 2.3 being the absolute rock bottom. Otherwise, the whole move of the Elliott 5 waves to the upside, the impulse waves, would be invalidated. So we know that there's a theoretical bottom to this thing, that it couldn't drop down any lower than that without invalidating the entire pattern. With that being said, even a 3.4 cent VeChain is very unlikely at this point. And ultimately, guys, the 4.6 is also an area that should hold up quite well if we were to have a bit of a tumble down there. With that being said, though, guys, things are looking in a pretty positive position here on this daily chart. So what we can see here is basically during this latest correction a few days ago, we actually had an increase in volume. So that sentiment here on these few days were basically incredibly fearful in the space, and ultimately was trying to liquidate as much of their VeChain as possible. And again, there were some buying opportunities here, and unfortunately you can see that there wasn't too much buying opportunities or volume behind that, and it was basically dwindled down pretty quickly. We obviously then saw a bit of a red day, and we had that correction come down here as well. So let me just zoom in so you guys can see those candles a little bit clearer. Now, what's really interesting about this move is that Bitcoin pulled down, reset that lower area here. According to the Wyckoff accumulation with Bitcoin, this would be the secondary test in phase B, which then sort of pushed to the upside. We are in the secondary kind of pullback, or just a pullback from that motion to the upside. This actually is bottomed out now for basically for Bitcoin, which means Bitcoin's going to get a reversal to the upside. And as Bitcoin has an impact on many of these altcoins, my expectations are that VeChain is also going to get a push to the upside as well. So again, we take a look at this downward trend. It is likely that actually this downward trend is going to get broken really, really soon. So what I'll do is on this daily chart, I'll just grab a trend line. Obviously, trend lines are so weak, they get broken and invalidated very, very quickly. But you can see there's a bit of a downward trend here. It's far too steep to be sustainable. So it's likely to get broken very, very fast. And my expectations are, guys, that we're going to break this trend line, within the next kind of day or two. So 48 hours, I would have thought that would have been invalidated. So again, when we take a look at it from a daily point of view, it's always good to have an idea of how those things are forming, but ultimately, I think they're going to be short-lived. Now, what I mean by this is if I bring up Bitcoin's chart here, this is something I've done a few times today, so you bear with me for a second. We can obviously see the secondary test in phase B. We see that at the bottom, we've had the push up to our upper area here. We had the pullback, again, comes in line with our expectations. And now we're going to be moving to the next target, guys, which would be this area just up here, which comes in just under 40K. Okay, this will then have a pullback before going up and achieving about 41 to 42K. And then we go into the major low areas again. So right now there's an opportunity to the upside, and all that retail money will be basically accumulated and taken out by the institutions who are creating this pattern. And after that, they'll be accumulating back down at the bottom here. And then obviously we go into phase C. And then from phase C, we go into basically D, which will be showing the show of strength, going into phase E, which takes us out of this accumulation period altogether. So it is going to be a volatile moment for Bitcoin, and obviously Bitcoin's volatility will have an impact on VeChain. So the expectations are we've had the bottom here in line with Bitcoin. We're going to push up significantly. I imagine that VeChain's most likely going to find some resistance area at around 9.2 cent. So let's jump down into our hourly. This is where we have all of our kind of support and resistance lines kind of scoped out. So we can see the price action here for VeChain. Let me just make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see that clearly. So we obviously have had the most recent downward trend here. We can see that happening, right? We can see the motion to the downside. Now, what's interesting is that volume has been decreasing ever so slightly. And again, we take a look at that generalized fear and greed index. It's general fear. It's fear. It's a little bit higher than it was yesterday, which was extreme fear. But again, this is actually a day behind in itself. We take a look at the fear and greed index from 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗠𝗘𝗏. Again, it's saying it's extreme fear. So the AI is also in line with our generalized fear and greed index. And again, not quite aligned to the most recent price action here for VeChain. So what's really interesting about VeChain is obviously we have this downward motion. We have a slight decrease on that volume, which is already quite low, but we're also approaching that oversold area on the relative strength index. This tells me that in line with Bitcoin reaching the kind of bottom area that it's needed to correct it down to, the VeChain's correcting down to a low area, finding support around here at around 7.2 at the absolute low area. Though it seems to be doing very, very well at 7.3 at the minute, could actually start to see a reversal and a pushback to the upside. That is the expectation on the short time here for VeChain. So VeChain is likely to get a short-term pump to the upside in line with Bitcoin. I imagine that it's going to find resistance up here at about 9.2 cent. This is going to be an area where we'll probably have a little bit of a struggle, a bit of a pullback before potentially breaking past this area and going to 9.8. There's going to be an upward battle, guys. You can see the amount of resistance lines that we've got here. These are key areas that we've kind of been battling through on the way down that we're going to have to battle our way through on the way up. But ultimately, guys, we'll take this step by step. We'll see that we are likely to get the reversal. There's going to be a little bit of resistance just up here at about 8.3. Get past that. I think we'll get past that pretty quickly, considering Bitcoin is due to have a significant rise in value. And this should take us to about 9.2. I think 9.2 is going to be the area that we're going to run out of steam, have the pullback. And what we'd like to do is actually back test down on 8.3, get that bounce from 8.3 and then go up to about 10 cent or so, and then start to work our way from there. I do think, however, we are likely to have another major pullback, bringing VeChain right the way back down to these lower areas of like 7.5, 8 cent. I think that's going to be the expectation halfway through once we kind of get past Bitcoin's next couple of steps. Once Bitcoin does that, does its next couple of moves, I do imagine that VeChain will be up there at 10 cent, being pulled all the way back down towards 7 cent. So guys, if you're still accumulating, there's going to be opportunities to come back into this zone down here in a few weeks, I would have thought. And once Bitcoin has kind of rallied up a bit of retail money before getting that taken back out of play. So my expectations, guys, are that VeChain is going to do really well over the next little while, but do be prepared for another major pullback. But again, we're going to be doing these updates frequently enough to keep you up to date with where we see things going. Like we have done previously, we've been calling that price was going to move up and price was going to move down. We see that, and we're calling that tomorrow is going to be a green day. Price is likely to move up in the next 24 to 48 hours. And again, the expectations will be that we'll pull back from 9.2 to about 8.3, and then from there we'll be going up towards 10 cent before we have a major pullback again. So the expectations for VeChain are set pretty clearly. We obviously know where we are short term. We obviously know where we are going with the big long-term picture, that macro picture, right? We're talking about a dollar level here, and that is where wave 5 is likely to peak out at. So again, we know where we're going on the bigger macro picture towards the second half of this year. We also know what to expect and not to get surrounded by too much fear in terms of the price moving up significantly, or at least getting a few cents behind it before having another major pullback. This does not symbolize a bear market. All it is doing is mirroring what Bitcoin is doing, and Bitcoin is currently, at least in my opinion, following a Wyckoff accumulation after the Wyckoff redistribution. Guys, if you found this useful, informative, hit that like button. I really do appreciate that. And if you happen to be new, do go ahead and subscribe. Make sure you tap that bell, click on all notifications, and you won't miss a single video. With that said, done and out of the way, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next one.